but that was like really trial by fire. I was getting thrown in and really learning so much about TV, which I knew nothing about, and kind of the dynamics. Certainly working with a level of actors I had never worked with before, things like that. So that was really the start of it. I cut my teeth on that, and then later went to Georgia, and I got on In the Heat of the Night after doing a couple of cable movies, and I was doing locations at that time. And the man who hired me was the location manager for the show, and we did a couple seasons before moving on and just doing a lot of movies across the country. A lot of adaptations, it turns out, a lot of John Grisham movies, for one thing. And I just really fell in love with production, and I really fell in love with script writing. I think that script to screen process, watching, I mean, I was fortunate to work with people like Francis Coppola, Michael Apted, Terry, well, he was an interesting cat. 12 Monkeys was an interesting thing, but Terry Gilliam, but all of them brought something to the plate that was just fascinating. So while I was steeped in production, and of course, locations is a great position for that because you're creative and pragmatic, right? You're serving the community, you're serving the crew, you're serving the directors and division and the producer's budget and the art department's needs and stuff like that. So it's a great position to learn in, and I really, really love that. But it also allowed me to kind of be in the shadow of some of these amazing filmmakers, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. So, more movies later, Scott and I got married, and we ended up having a daughter. And so I was more home based, and he continued he's a DGA UPM, he's a co-producer. And so he kind of continued up that line, and I decided, okay, it's probably time to put the writer's hat on. And so I really, in earnest, started kind of going through, writing academy, a la Anna, with all the books and programs and just so many things. And I wrote a lot of spec scripts, and it developed a few things, and some almosts along the way, and then kind of put the producer's hat on again when we were developing this project. We partnered with an A-list actor, Richard Gere, and we were doing a book adaptation with him as partners, as co-producers. He and I were co-writers, and that was really an insightful journey as well, in terms of seeing, both sides, serving the story creatively, pragmatically. We did some scouting, went to China, where Richard couldn't go, at the time because of his situation with the Dalai Lama. But anyway, just it kind of changed and shifted gears over time. So we ended up not making it. It kind of, life changed, life happened. We didn't make the movie, but it was an amazing experience to learn, being in that kind of seat. So those are some of the highlights of my career. I've since written even more specs. I've written some paid assignments. I've written some TV pilots now. I'm kind of venturing more into that a little bit, even though I don't know that I want to be like a staff writer, but I definitely conceptually like creating pilots and Bibles and stuff like that. So, along the way, I certainly, writing so many stories kind of developed what I came to know as my brand, what I really enjoyed writing about. And I think if any of you are interested in pursuing writing, or if you do pursue writing, that is something that is probably going to be a good thing to know about yourself. I know for me, I've always been passionate about social justice. So my brand is that I love to write diverse characters, underdog characters, a lot of them women, who will buck the system and defy expectations for some kind of social relevance, right? Some kind of social change. And not preachy or didactic, but entertaining and fun. So, I'd love to write something like Aaron Brockovich or something like The Hunger Games. But I also love Forrest Gump, and I love Beautiful Mind. And so I'm just kind of in with those characters who who are the unexpected, who affect some really cool change. So those were kind of interesting things to know. And that leads me to saying that, I love to write diversity, and a lot of characters and stories come to me as they are. And a lot of the characters don't look a thing like me. So that puts me in the unenviable position of having to try and pitch projects where I don't directly reflect the character that I'm pitching about. So we'll talk about that. That's kind of been an interesting thing to have to deal with. And just pitching in general.
I want to ask you a question before you go into pitching, because pitching is something I think is really important. And I know
Yeah.
you talked about it, and you gave me some insight onto pitching that I hadn't really had myself. But before you do that, I have a couple of quick questions about what you've discussed so far. One of the first things was, you said, I know you work on a lot of original stuff, so stuff that you come up with, but have you worked on, when you say amendments or is that somebody's come to you with a script that they need you to fine tune? Have you done some of that as well?
Yeah, so like script doctoring, a little bit of that, but a really good example would be yet another adaptation. There was a man who had written a book. He himself was big in the archery business. His company made bullseyes, targets for archery, professional and amateur archery. And so he had written a book that, it was self-published. It was kind of his own invented story. And it didn't, it wasn't really, he was not a writer, so it was not a strongly written book, but it was an interesting story. So he hired me to turn it into a script. And he wanted to go at that point, after he paid me to write it. And of course it was a work for hire, so he owned it. He wanted to go and try and see if he could put together a package and get financing and stuff. And I don't think he ever did. I never heard any more about it, but that was a good example of a paid assignment.
Okay, great. So I was, if in combination with the stuff you work on for yourself, the original pieces, do you also try to elicit work in that way, whether it's an adaptation or script doctoring or whatever? I didn't know if you thought that was a viable way to also continue to script write.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who, John Sayles is a great example of someone who was an outstanding script doctor. He did tons of paid assignments in addition to his own material. So he made a decent living at both, really. I have not done anywhere nearly, as much as he has, or even close. So most of mine is original that I try and pitch directly, or see if I can get attachments, or just see if I can sell. But I have done some of the others. So yes, you can absolutely, be a work for hire or take assignments. That's what they call it. If you have a manager, if you're pitching and you're pitching your story, and they maybe say, well, it's not for us, or we're looking for something different, then you can immediately turn it around and say, well, look, if you think it's a good enough sample, I'd like to be considered for, for assignments. And that tells them that, okay, you don't mind working on another project, somebody else's, maybe theirs, and either pitching an idea about it, or just being paid to make changes or do a rewrite or something like that. So it's definitely out there.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, were you segueing into pitching?
Actually, I'm just kind of rolling. So I'm totally open for questions as we go along. It's, to me, more of a conversation and a dialogue than just me talking. So, it all ties together. Certainly my experience to writing what I write, to pitching what I write, is there's a through line there. But, there's a lot of stuff going on along the way. And there's certainly a lot of elements about any of those pieces for me or for any writer. So I'm happy to take questions as we go along, versus trying to save them all to the end in case we don't remember them,
Right.
So, before I go into anything more like the pitching experience I found, does anybody have any other questions they'd like to ask so far?
I did want, do you have something, Basil?
Yeah, I just gonna ask very quickly. You said you write specs. How often do you write specs, and are they very much tailored towards production company A versus B and so forth? Or is this part of the pitching part you're gonna talk about later?
No, that's a good question. I do not tailor my idea toward any actor or company or anything like that. I have found in my experience, especially working with a lot of studios on these big film projects, seeing how scripts came in to directors and actors, you don't have to do that. If you have a story, whatever your story is, you write that. And if it's appealing to you, it will appeal to somebody else out there, and you may not know who that is. So you might be able to say, well, it's probably going to be a small budget film. It might be more indie than studio, or it's not high concept, which would require more money. It's more, it's smaller. Those kind of things you might know going in, or have a rough idea of budget, if it's 10 million versus 30. But otherwise, it's just really writing the story as best you can, and then either having a manager, agent, or yourself trying to go find companies that do films like yours, and then go to them and say, this is why I think you might like my film too, because you did ABC, and this is in that vein, or the same genre or similar tone, or it's also a whatever, it's a confined setting type of piece or something like that. But you'll find where the similarities are, but I wouldn't write for that reason.
And I have a follow-up question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Do you find it easier for you to pitch a screenplay versus pitch a whole movie while you're wearing the hat of a producer?
So two totally separate things, right? As I've written a script, I only have a script. It's a feature or a TV pilot. So I'm now going to target who I pitch that to. And if it's, what company takes it, and I am just pitching the script with myself as the writer, and that's that. I was involved in the Richard Gere project, and that was a package, right? We had him, he was going to star and co-produce and all that. So that was more packaged. We went with different intention, and we went to different studios and distributors and things like that, because we had more involved. But I don't do a lot of that. I do more writing and pitching as a writer, and not really necessarily, I'd like to be on board as a producer, but I don't have to be. If someone likes the piece and they want it and I sell it, then that's okay. Now, if it's like a TV pilot or something like that, I don't really even see myself in the writer's room, so I don't necessarily need to be on board that way. But the professional side of it is, if I'm a writer, I sell what I write. That's what I want to do. So that's where I hang out more. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else? Just my question, do many of you who are on the call tonight, are you also writers or writers producers, or do you do short films, or what?
Definitely writer here. I know Basil's a writer. I think Mike might be somewhat of a writer.
I didn't want to manipulate the whole conversation, but yeah, I'm a writer, and I produce short films and very, very low budget independent film that I'm currently editing. It's just designed for film festivals, just to get people interested in the sort of things that I do. It's not really designed for distribution. It would be nice if we get it, but I was always realistic. That type of film is want to get attention, building up stepping stones to the next big thing. But I'm also very much interested in selling screenplay because, well, if you have enough people interested in it, it's less headaches to deal with later once you sell it.
And
Derva, did you want to speak to, is it Derva? Am I pronouncing it right? I have a
Yes,
terrible.
yes, you are.
She wanted to speak as well.
Hi. Hello, Anna. Thank you for everything you've said so far. I really loved, and this is why I decided to come on camera, was when because I resonated with what you said about you need to find your niche, like what drives you to write, and that your stories that you like, you usually write female-oriented characters
Mhm.
that break the stereotypes and cause like social change.
Mhm.
And I am not trained writer. I'm actually a physical therapist by profession, but filmmaking is a passion for me. And I have written, directed, and produced short films. I am writing a film that is based in rural part of India, and that will be the timeline is late 1980s, in a society where women should not be educated, and there's the central character, the protagonist, is a doctor, and she has to face the societal barriers, the stereotypes. She has to break those apart, and to a point where even her family doesn't want to have her in the house. They've like literally thrown her out on the streets, and she will find her passion through her work, and then she will move to better dimensions of life. And it's based on a true story. So I would like, since you also write original screenplays, if you could touch on that and how to address that and bring out the I don't know, the truth of that story in that time to inspire more people, especially women.
Right. Well, you bring up a lot of good stuff with that conversation. Certainly I've been involved, like the book I did with Richard was a true story. It was a nonfiction book. So we had to get the rights. There was a whole process with options, legalities that you really have to honor, chain of title, stuff like that. So I don't know if your true story is bound to another intellectual property. That is a huge thing if it is. If it's someone that you know and you're telling their story, it might be simpler just to get permission from them to do their,
Yes,
do that.
it's actually my mother.
It's your mother.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
she might be just fine to that. But you still want something in writing that would legally cover you, even if it is a friend or a parent or what have you. The thing that I would encourage anyone, any one of the jobs that we've talked about tonight, writing, producing, editing, any of it is a whole career in and of itself. There are so many levels of learning that one job that, to be just good at that, but to try and piece it all together is really difficult. And a lot of us learn by doing, and some of us just decide, we test drive it and say, no, you know what, I just only like this, or I want to write, produce, or write, direct, but I don't care to edit. I don't care to do anything else. So I would encourage that. And I did work on some short films. I wrote one and produced a total of 4. One of them won the jury prize at the Beverly Hills Film Festival. I was it was a company, they were just an upstart here in Orlando where I live. And I was kind of the most seasoned person there. So I kind of by default was the producer. And, they had the money and the budget. And so we put these together, and it really helps a lot when everyone kind of knows their job well and can do that well. And then everyone brings that thing to the table. And then you have a film that can hopefully grow legs and make it maybe to a bigger market, or to more festivals, or garner more professional access to things like that. So one thing I would stress is, especially for those of us who do multiple jobs, is especially for, like, say, writing or producing your own short film, which is what you were talking about, Derva, is rely on someone you trust outside of yourself to give you honest, and I mean honest feedback about the script. Is it strong enough? Is it good enough? Is there a solid story there? It's easy to kind of say, well, this is my story. I want to, I'm going to tell it. It's about my mother and no one else knows, her. And so I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to direct it my way, which can be satisfying, but not necessarily successful. So I'm going to encourage everybody that, and having grown, I've literally cut my teeth on the film business in Florida from the time I was at UF till I went to Miami, worked on Vice, worked on, USA cable movies. I worked on short films. I worked on tons of commercials, Elton John music video, whatever. To make a name for yourself, to be successful, you want to be really, really good at the one thing that you do, and wear that hat well, but know that hat, whether it's, like I say, writer, director, editor, producer, script supervisor, but to try and be jack of all trades is really, really tough. And it can sometimes not give you the unbiased, honest, outside opinion that you need to make sure that what you're producing or what you're creating or what you're writing is as good as it can be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would encourage that too. I do myself. I mean, I can't tell you how many people read my work, and I'm just a writer. I don't even try to produce and direct, and do all the other, but I want to make sure my script is as strong as it can be, and that someone besides me has seen it and truly highlights the holes, the problems. Because I can't necessarily see them. So that is one thing I really, really encourage. And I know in the state of Florida, because we don't have film incentives, because we're not Georgia, a lot of people do have to wear multiple hats, and it's hard. But you just want to be sure that you're still honoring the integrity of the project and of yourself along the way. I hope that helped.
Yes. Thank you.
Can I jump in?
Yes, Gorzart.
Everything you said is, I would say the same thing.
Mhm.
But I want to tell all our WIFT members, one of the things that you have here is you have support. For example, the contract that you might need for your mom to get permission to, even though it's mom, the paperwork that's required, you can ask us and we can help you find that. One of the things that I do, I read scripts from producers in Hollywood all the time. And my job is a feasibility study. So I'm the guy that sits there and looks at all the elements that are there. I don't look at the storyline. But as a member of WIFT, if you have a script, whether it be a short or a feature, I will do that for you for free. Okay? You just have to send me in Final Draft or Movie Magic Scheduling. Movie Magic Scriptwriter, and I'll be more than happy to do it for free, and then come back and do exactly what you said. I'll be honest with you and tell you, you have 433 principal characters. You have 2,000 locations that you don't know that you put in there, but I'll show you how you can correct that, okay? Because when you submit a script to somebody like the ones I get, and I see all these errors, I do the report back to California, and usually throw those scripts away because it just costs too much money to do. And that's the business side of what we do. It's the business, because that's what this is about, is really a business. But those offers are there for you as members. And one more thing is, we do have a WIFT member who just got financing for her script for development. And she's going through the same thing, because that has now gone up from a DGA director and a producer to A-list talent. And now they're coming back with comments to that script of how they think it might get better. And this is where you have to stop. And the Greeks have a word for it. It's called hubris, false pride. And you may stop for a second and go, but that's the way it should be. But that's not the way it will sell. That's not your target audience. And they'll come back and say, this is why we need to do it. And it's the business side. So you really have to listen to everything before you go, oh, no, I don't want anybody to change one word. Okay. If you're going to do that, write a novel. Okay. But not a screenplay, because what we're doing is teamwork. And all those jobs you talked about a second ago that we're specialists, we come to the table, that's the team. And we want an A-list team. Okay, and I'll be quiet.
Thank you, Art. Very, very good. Art is the jack of, talk about wearing many hats. Art has many, 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 many hats. He knows a lot of stuff. So he's a go-to for us in many ways. I was gonna say, Anna, when we were talking before about pitching, you know, being a script writer, you think you write the script and then miraculously that ends up where it's supposed to end up, and that you don't have to hustle, you know. And we were talking about how really as a script writer, you have to hustle almost as much as anybody else in production, because there's a lot of hustling and selling of yourself and all that stuff. And I had said to you, like, I don't think I'll make a good pitcher because I just don't know how to do that. So I think you saying the importance of it, how you go about preparing for it, who you're doing it, what opportunities you have to have that pitch, what it looks like. I'd love to hear from you a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. And well, it's a good segue in, you know, into that, and then we can, you know, discuss it and take questions on that. So, you know, having written, you're absolutely right, Janine, because having written the feature or the television pilot, that's just half the battle. And by the way, that's having studied how to write really good screenplay structure. That's having had people read it and give you notes and make a million changes and, you know, refine and get it better and better. And then when you are ready to show it, then unless you have a producer that you work with or a director to go to, or if you have a rep or a manager, but even if you do, you're still going to find yourself pitching. And sometimes that's in written form and sometimes it's verbal. And it's kind of it's really, especially in this day and age, and it's done a lot over Zoom, which in a way is great because you can live anywhere and pitch to an exec in California, no problem. And they'll take 10, 15 pitches a day, you know, and each pitch is 7 to 8 minutes. So you have to have your story tight to be able to deliver who you are, why you're writing it, the genre, the tone, the title, and the story within 6 minutes, so that you have a minute for the exec's questions and maybe conversation, or if you have something in common, having a little, you know, nicety time. But that is something that's really, really important. For short films, I don't know. I just don't deal in short films. So I don't think there is that, because there's not like an active marketplace for them. Usually people who write shorts are going to produce or direct them. They're going to take them to festivals, maybe do a web series, something like that. But for features and for television, it's really, you know, if you want to hit the marketplace, you're going to target those companies. Let's say you pick 10 that are really right for what your script, what you've written. And you know that they take this kind, you know, they want comedies, they want thrillers, they want true crime, they want whatever, and you've written it. So now you're going to target them, and through especially helpful or platforms like Stage 32 and Roadmap, Screenwriting U is another that does a lot of teaching, but also they try and help you market your script. And you can have access, it's paid, but you have access to notable producers, agents, managers, reps who are there to hear your story. And you've just paid for, you know, 8 minutes of their time to pitch. And it's a shame really that we're at that place. It wasn't like that before, but nowadays it's very difficult without a rep manager or lawyer to get your stuff to someone. The submissions, they just don't take them. But they will come on these Zoom or Skype or phone pitch sessions, and they'll listen. And a lot of writers sell their stuff this way, so it's working. But you have to be so tight and polished with your story. You know, it's got to be no more than a page and a half. And whether you send it written, it's a little different than the one you read, because you can be a little more effusive. But you've got to know you're the only one who knows your story. So you have to know your story so well. And you know, you need to deliver the important stuff, but not too many details, because they get bogged down. And then if you're lucky, at the end of it, they'll ask to read the script. Some hear the pitch and pretty much know, no, it's not for me. If you deliver a bad pitch, that's a guarantee they won't read it. You really have to engage them. Not too effusive, not boring. know your stuff, be able to answer a question or two if they have it. And a big thing now is why are you the writer? What makes you the one to write this story, right? Especially in this day of being very sensitive to diversity. You know, they see my face and I have a Black character, they're going to be like, well, why you? You know, so I better have an answer to the question of where this came from or what it means to me, or the social justice piece or something like that. And they ask, why now? Why this script now? What's the relevance of it? What does it mean? Why should it be in the marketplace? So have an answer to that question, whether it's like, I've just finished a TV pilot that I dearly love, and the concept came during COVID, and it's completely a indigenous based thriller twist on climate change, right? I had no idea where it came. The story came to me and it just wouldn't let go till I wrote it. But I love the story and it's really different. So in pitching it, I've got to be able to answer those questions of how, you know, why me, a non-Indigenous writer. I'm at the same time trying to connect with the Native American community, so I can maybe try and collaborate or partner with someone who can represent the culture and work with me to make it, you know, to honor it and make it real. So there is that whole side of things. And so it's, you know, who are you to write it and why write it now? What does it mean right now? And, you know, what makes it relevant and why your story over someone else's, you know, why this story? So those are some of the things that you've got to know your piece, know your work so well that you feel comfortable answering those questions. And you can do it whether you're like this on Zoom or you can put it in writing or however, but yeah, it's a new day and age for pitching. So yeah, Basil.
How did you answer, or how do you plan to answer the question of why indigenous if you're not Native American? How do you answer that?
For that particular story, because it's climate change and because the idea of kind of sort of Mother Earth coming to reclaim her planet from those who are greedy and killing it, the indigenous around the world have been more true at honoring the planet and caring. And so they are a natural portal for her to come back, for her to want to reclaim and remove those who have been abusive and who've had a chance but haven't, you know, lived up to it. So the indigenous community is a natural portal for her to come back through. So that's kind of the answer to that question. So in my case, it's specifically the Lakota tribe. It's not just any, but it's going to involve indigenous cultures around the world because again, they tend to honor the planet more. They understand why it's important to do that. So we need to have them be kind of what drives the ship on this story and be the doorway.
Has any producer told you you can't do this? It has to come from their words, or?
I talked to one producer who really loved the idea, but her first thing was, look, you just really need to get it vetted by someone who's in that community to make sure that there's nothing offensive, because, you know, how would they know, right? They're as white as I am. So like, just to be kind of on the safe side. So that is one reason I'm really trying to, I've had the idea, I've written it, but now I want to make it, you know, to get it into hands that can work with me to make it accurate and to make producers feel comfortable that it.
So in that case, if I may, with another follow-up, sorry, it's taking a lot of time, but would you, I mean, do you feel you have to include a co-writer that is from the Lakota tribe or the, you know, whichever nation?
I know there's a lot of, like, I've read a lot of articles, I've done a lot of research. And one of the things that happens, and we'll just stick with this example for a second, is that a lot of non-Indigenous people will create a product and then they just kind of want like a seal of approval, right? They just want to, hey, you read it, tell me if I'm close. Does this seem pretty good? Thank you. And then I take it. And I think in this case, especially given the nature and the depth and the complexity, and I'd like this to be something that, you know, I have 5 seasons outlined. I'd like to see all 5, you know, fly, is I think it actually needs to have that DNA come aboard and be part of it. And I think that I would disrespect if I didn't do that. So I'm very happy to collaborate and share in the story and the profits and whatever in the business of it, because I think it needs that.
Okay. One more thing that just came to mind. So you've already created the Bible for the entire 5 seasons. Okay. Did you have to pitch that? Because that would be cumbersome in a pitch. Or did you just tell, I have the Bible for the 5 seasons?
I have to have it. Not a lot of people, it's interesting. They either want the script, the Bible, or the pitch deck. And I don't yet know how to make a pitch deck. I mean, honestly, it's just new for me. But I know how to do a Bible, and I know how to write a strong pilot. So those have been my strengths. And the pitch deck, I'm just kind of getting new on doing. And sometimes that's requested, but knowing where your story's going, especially, you know, with television, you've got to be able to answer that question of, you know, what is the log line for the pilot? What is the log line for the season? And they're different, right? You need to know, how does season 1 end versus how does the series end? And they're looking for, it doesn't have to be 5, it can be 3, it could be 2 if that's your story, but they need to know it's more than 1. And unless it's like a limited series or something like that. But that's why the Bible is there, and it fleshes out the characters more. It gives them a bit more of the world, the setting. And most, you know, I've pitched to Netflix, I've pitched all over, and most everybody needs to know a little bit more about that before they'll really, you know, ponder the script.
Thank you, Anne.
And I would like to say that the concept is amazing. I would definitely watch all 5 of those seasons, and I would make everyone in my family watch. My question was, how would you answer when executives ask you, like, why are you the writer? How would you answer that for this concept that you just said?
The honest truth of it is what I would tell them. Look, the story found me. The story picked me. I don't know why. And maybe it's it goes back to my branding, because I have such a heart for climate care, for justice. This whole idea that Mother Earth comes back to kind of reclaim the planet is something that evolved into the story that it wanted to be. Why me? How I look? I think part of it is that it's my passion. It's something, I think it's relevant. I think it's timely. And I think we can't sit back anymore and just let people who look like me do a whole lot of horrible things as they are. And so I think that's another reason. And I just feel like I reflect maybe an audience that we need to have. So that would probably be my reason for it.
I love it.
Anybody else?
I have a 2-part question. One,
Oh, Janine.
yeah, sorry. Like I said, the camera didn't want to show me today. Don't look good enough on camera, I guess. So 2-part question. One, when you've had actual live, so not the ones you've sent in, but the ones you've done actually live, how do you prepare for that? Do you make a note card? Do you read off the note card? I was watching on a master class with Shonda Rhimes. She said, I'm the worst pitcher ever. I fumble. I do a terrible, terrible job. She said, I'm just a terrible pitcher. But I was wondering, you know, with you saying you have to be sharp, and I think that's imperative when you have the ear of someone who can make a decision for you. You've got to be really clean in what you're pitching. But how do you prepare when you've had your personal experience with pitching and you prepare for that? How do you do that? Do you make note cards? How does that look? What does that look like?
Well, I have taken some pitching courses, you know, webinars, weekend workshop kind of things and from a couple different sources. So like Stage 32 and Roadmap, they both have these kinds of things. I've certainly looked at some of my own, and there's kind of a normalcy to the style of it. So really the key is being able to consolidate your story into, like I say, about a 5 to 6 minute time frame where you go from beginning to middle to end. You hit the structural landmarks, between acts and the mid-act climax and things like that. You don't call it that, but you flow through it, and then you have a definitive ending, and you just rehearse it and you read it and you look at it and you groom it, and then I have it in my head, and I keep it, next to me on paper, right? But I'm talking to the exec through the Zoom light, and I can refer to it as I need to, because it's written and I've got certain words highlighted or bold and, in bold or something like that. But I know the story so well that I almost could tell it without the paper. And it's just, the paper is my reference to make sure I don't forget anything, a detail that I want to add at this particular point that I may forget and have to add in later. I don't want to do that. So I keep the paper for that, but it's really just practicing, rehearsing, timing, literally timing yourself, and learning the pitch through outlets that know and have refined this pitch process and can help, craft it. Like I go back to Roadmap because they have the pitch classes, but then they also have staff who are available and willing to like zoom in with you and listen to you pitch and give you, pointers. Oh, you did this, you went long, I didn't understand that. And they do it free so that you can actually have like a prep. And then that will help. And then if you get that, refine it, maybe they'll do it again. And that kind of helps too. So things like that. And then sometimes I'll pitch the same thing, to multiple executives over a month. And so I just have to kind of rehearse a little bit, but then I'm right there. Some people I know tape the pages on either side of the camera, but then you look like you're reading. So I wouldn't recommend that. But just know your story, know your story. That's the key.
Derva asked about Roadmap. Roadmap is a website that helps. Is it just for screenwriters?
It's screenwriting. I mean, I know Joey, the owner, he's had a couple other companies, and he I think partnered with Stage 32 before they separated into other things, but his whole goal was to help screenwriters contact executives and managers and reps. So in a way that they couldn't in real life, right? So that Roadmap and Stage 32, you should just go on and Google around them, and they all offer workshops, webinars. Some are free, some are paid. They offer pitching opportunities to help you get in front of an exec that may be right for your material. And they're very good. Like I say, they're not free, you got to pay, but it's the whole goal, like Joey says, is that, we want you not to need us anymore. We want to get you to the point where you've got that manager, that rep, you're a sold writer, you don't need this anymore. And so things like that are helpful in the interim.
And those two specific websites, Roadmap and Stage 32, are pretty comprehensive in a lot of different facets of that. I mean, it's not just pitching or one thing. There's a lot of different resources, right, and a lot of different ways that you can, like Anna said, some are paid, some are not. They're really, really good. But like with anything else, if you don't use it, if you don't go in and you don't, they have lots of things, but you have to be the one that goes in and does something with them. The second part of my question is intertwined with the pitching. As far as TV executives or film executives, whichever, do you feel like there's important things to know when dealing with TV or film executives?
I always research the executive. Always. I look them up on IMDb Pro. I make sure that I know a little bit about their other projects. If I need to use that, like, oh, I see that you've got, so-and-so going right now. This is similar to that. Or I see that you've produced a couple TV series that were thriller or whatever's. Mine is like that. So I can connect for them, like a precedent has been set. I'm not coming out of the gate with something totally foreign to what they do. But I also, having worked in the movie business for, so long, there's a lot of execs that we have something in common. We both have worked with the same actor, or we've worked with the same director, or we might've even worked on the same project or crossed paths that way. So I try to just gently, hey, did you do 12 Monkeys, yeah, I was on that too. And we have a little moment, and then I'll be like, well, it's nice to see you again. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about, whatever. But I always research, never go in cold, ever, because it's not professional, number one. And number two, you might just find that little grain of something that helps you be remembered or stand out, or helps them know that you're a player and not just, someone who's doing this, on the fly or something.
Great advice. My husband's a VP, and he says the number one thing he asks everyone that interviews for him is, tell me about my company. And the people that can't tell him any about his company, that's just a big negative for them.
Yeah, no, it's
That's
very
great.
true, because they want to know that they mean something. They're not just an 8-minute chunk of time that you're throwing spaghetti on the wall and hoping something will stick.
Right.
Art, you had a question.
Yeah, I was going to say, you talk about small world. I worked on 12 Monkeys in Philadelphia for a week back in 1995, I think it was.
Yeah,
Right?
what'd
And
you
I
do?
also, it's really funny. I was a teacher, and I had students, and Peoples, I think, was the writer.
Mhm.
One of the writers' name was Peoples. He goes by funny name Peoples. But I was able to work on projects and bring my students along. And I taught in South Jersey, and Philly was like, not too far away. And Bruce Willis was a friend. That's another one, because he's a Jersey guy too.
Mhm.
And I worked on Miami Vice, the TV series, right, the 2-hour special at West Point. And then I did the movie down in Key Biscayne on the big bridge.
Oh yeah,
When they were doing that, let's block the bridge for a day and get in trouble kind of thing.
right.
Yeah. So I
Nice.
worked on that. And
So
see, this is
small
where
world.
this is where the small world works.
Yeah.
And then when you were talking, I typed in Stormbringer,
Mhm.
which is an Indian legend about this thing, supernatural thing that comes back to try to correct all the evils of the world, of the change of the environment and stuff. I didn't know
I
if you know
wondered what
that.
that was.
Yes, because I have a script here that somebody did many years ago, and
Mhm.
and they did really good graphics to try to pitch it. But when I was listening to your idea, I was going, I think I have that somewhere in my stuff. But this is the small world deal. So
Mhm.
where you work with people and you remember it, and you come back and you go, you know what? Because it gives a relationship,
Mhm.
and everything that we do is based on trust. Trust is really critical in this career, because you get the people that tell stories and the people that are con artists and the wannabes, and they hurt what you guys try to do because they scare people away with the money. So I'll be quiet again.
It is. I mean, you've probably heard that a lot. It's a networking business, and it is. You don't have to live in LA or New York to do it, but it is one where if you can network, if you know someone who knows someone, or you can, use that relationship, then it's wise to do so. That's the people expect it. It's because then like Art said, it they can trust. It's like that one little level. It's like I was saying earlier about just being a writer that says, hi, I'm going to tell you about my script, versus, hey, did you work on 12 Monkeys? And they say, yeah, well, me too. It validates. There's a trust. There's the even the subliminal idea that I'm more experienced, or that I know, because I've done something in the business. It's just, when you can use that, it's really helpful, I found. And it's a business of ideas. I've crossed a lot of writers, new writers, especially young writers, who are so afraid of telling their story. I don't want anyone to know they're going to steal my idea. And if that is the case, then don't be in this business. Get out now, because we are in a business of ideas. That's what we do. And I could tell you right now my story about this Indigenous guy and what he goes through. And you might already have another similar idea, but that doesn't mean that we're competing. I'm stealing from you, you're stealing from me. It's just the nature of the beast. Yours is going to be different than mine in your way. So the one thing I can't stress enough: protect your work, register it, copyright it, but don't be afraid to pitch it. And when you pitch the story. So if you have a twist ending, tell them, don't hold back. I've just heard so many young writers who, this is the wall they hit against, and all the pros on the other side of the wall are done. They tune out, that they're not there anymore. So just make sure that when you have your idea and it's cohesive and you've written that script and you've gotten feedback on it from people you trust, other writers, professionals, get it read at a competition, whatever, then don't be afraid, protect it, but then don't be afraid to share it.
That's
Very
very
good advice,
insightful.
Anna.
Thank you, Anna, for that. That
Mhm.
meant a lot to hear that, especially for
Mhm.
your young writer like me. I usually have that feeling of, I want to tell the person the story because I really respect that. Yes, give me more suggestions, but there's also this fear from like hearing from other people that don't tell them everything because they're gonna steal. So there's always that thing that just, I want to tell you everything, but I can't. So I don't know where to filter. So thank you. That really meant a lot to hear.
Absolutely. Well, like I say, protect it. And that's what you write. You can protect it through the Writers Guild. You don't have to be a member, but you can protect it that way. You can register it. And then you can also go to the copyright office with it. And then the good thing about like copyright is if you change it, add to it, you turn it from a TV pilot to a feature, you write a novel about it, whatever, you can just add on layers to the same copyright number. It's all there. If you register your script with the Writers Guild, I think it's 5 years, Art. Am I right about that? Is it 5 years that you have?
You're on mute, Art.
Yeah, it's I believe it's 5 years, and then you have to go back and you have to re-register it again.
But you
Right.
can still modify it too, right? Like if you change the title, or if
Yes, you can.
turn it from a feature to a TV show, you can say that used to be called The Good Night. Now it's called whatever,
Right.
but it's the same registration number. If it's within the 5 years, you don't have to, I don't think you have to pay.
back.
You might, but anyway, it's very nominal. But protect your work. I mean, that's a no-brainer. To protect it, it's just like having something in writing about the life rights for your mom. It's a no-brainer, and it protects you both, her too. But it's a business. Think of it like a business, and it's a business of ideas, and you can't sell your widget, which is your idea, unless you share it. It's that simple, and there are very, very experienced Oscar-winning writers out there sharing their stories. So they're not sitting home going, oh, I better not tell anybody. They're calling up Sean Levy of 21 Laps and saying, hey, I have an idea. Can I run this past you? Or I've got a new script. What do you think? And that's how it's done.
Anna, I've got a question, and then I'm going to open it up to everybody else because I want to be respectful of your time. So let's say, like Derva said, let's say she finished her script, or any of us finish our script, right? And we're aspiring writers. What's the first thing to do? To try to get it produced by a production company, to try to get a manager, to try to get an agent? What do you think next steps are once you've got a finished product?
I'm going to answer that question by saying it really depends on what you want to do. There are plenty of people who want to write what they're going to produce. They're going to raise the money for it, and they're going to make it and take it to festivals, right? So that's one path. There are writers who are going to strictly write and try to sell their work. In both cases, you write it, you groom it, you edit it, and then you get the outside feedback, you change it, you protect it. Like those are right up front, period. Even if you're going to produce and direct it yourself. You do those things. You want to make it the best it can be, and don't rely on your own judgment for that. I don't care what if you're making a short film for the festivals, do not rely only on yourself, because I can tell you as a writer, you're not good enough. You cannot be unbiased enough to be honest about your own work. So make sure others are reading it and giving you feedback, and honor, not every note. You're not going to agree with everything, but if you're getting 5 people to tell you they got the same problem, then it's a problem, fix it. Then, like I say, register your work, at least if you don't also copyright it. And then once you've got a really solid piece, because you kind of get one shot at an executive, right? You don't want to just hurry it out the door, get it. Maybe they read it and they hate it because it's not polished enough, or you haven't checked it for typos, or even more than that, the story's not solid and strong and structurally as it should be. So you can't go back to them and say, hey, I've just revised it. Will you read it again? That would be no. You had your one shot. that's not always 100% true, but it's true a lot of the time. So you want to be sure that what you go out with is as strong as it possibly can be. And then you target the companies. Like if you're not going to make it yourself and you're going to sell, you're going to pitch, you're going to market, then you need to, and whether that's you're trying to get a manager or an agent, or you're going to a production company, you've got to research like what manager at which of these agencies takes writers like me. You don't want to go to a comedy specific manager and you're a thriller writer, or you don't want to go to, a manager who only does really, really well-known famous writers. And you're going to go in and say, me too, because you're going to be lost in the sauce. So you want to maybe find the boutique agents, the boutique reps, managers, and go to them first. And have your pitch, have your story, be able to send them an email that kind of highlights just a very quick version of what your story's about, who you are, and that you're interested in representation. Now, if you're going to go to an exec, it's a similar thing that you're going to target the companies who you think are a good fit for your work, that your work suits what they do, and you can indicate why. So whether that's a production company or a studio, or if I wrote a script that I knew a particular actress I think would be great for, and she has a production deal with Warner Brothers, then I may target her and just say, would you be interested in this project, both as a vehicle to star in and for your production company? It's worth a shot. If I've researched her and I know she's got a 12-picture deal with Warner Brothers, then I may stand a chance. So I need to take those steps. And it's not always just black, white, but those are the basic steps to take when you're going from idea to a marketable script.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Anna, you've been amazing. As I've spoken to you before, I was like, wow, she's got so many good thoughts. Again, to
Thank you.
thing. Go ahead, Art.
I wanted to throw two things in on the legal sides for everybody. One of the things that's important, thanks to the technology today of the computer, one of the ways that helps save your script ideas is because it's time dated within the computer. When you do it, when you do your title page and you put a date on it, okay, you want to, if you make corrections, change that date. So you're adding it to your file of saving it. Okay. And this way it gives you a chronological order of the number of times you've opened it and you've saved it. That's number one. Number two, a real simple thing that came to haunt people in Florida, along with the Hallmark Channel, is when you work with people that you're writing with. Some of them might be your best friends, but when somebody wants to buy it, it may not be your best friend anymore. Okay, so one of the things I tell people is if you're going to get a co-writer or someone that's going to assist on your project, do a simple contract for a work for hire for 1 day for $1. Okay, and get that signed, because we lost a great chance to work with Hallmark here because somebody said they were a co-writer, and because the writer talked to the person about help, okay, that person became the co-writer, and it ruined the deal. So if you work with somebody, you're sitting down, you're asking for, like whatever the help is, just do a thing for $1 for 1 day, and on this little agreement, and your work for hire then for that person with you. So that's what you want to do to protect your stuff, because remember, I told you before, it's a business, and one mistake like that can ruin it. Those production companies have more lawyers than I have here. Okay, so it's really important that you follow all those rules. And I'll be quiet.
And one thing, I mean, I've had an entertainment attorney for years, and you don't have to have a big expensive one, but the one that we have, my husband and I have, he's private practice, he's in LA, and he comes from MGM UA back in the day. And then he branched out on his own, and he's really, really familiar with all kinds of rights, options, contracts. I've had him write up so many different things. He was very pivotal in our Richard Gere arrangement, and he's not ridiculously expensive, but I will say that they are worth their weight in gold when they know and entertainment law is very different from any other law. So don't think that you can go to the home family attorney and have him know entertainment law, because it's not going to work. There's very specific things that an entertainment attorney knows that has to be relevant for this business. So he's amazing. I'm happy to share that, but get someone that you trust, because also if you don't have an agent or manager, an entertainment attorney can also sometimes submit projects for you as a writer. Studios will often accept from an attorney and in lieu of a manager or rep.
Very good. We do have one in WIFT too, in case you guys have a question. We have one within WIFT. He spoke with us last month and he answered a lot of questions for a lot of people. Does anyone have any other questions for Anna?
Yeah, Ella has a question.
Do you like writing TV shows or like films better?
Very good.
That's a really good question. What's your name?
I'm Ella.
Hi, Ella. That's a really good question. And I'm going to tell you that I think, I've always loved writing features better because I worked on features and that was what I knew. And I really understand, and I like writing a comprehensive story that's told in one sitting. You go to the movies, you watch the movie, you go home and you've enjoyed it. At the same time, I've now written 2 television series. I've actually written 4 altogether, but 2 that I'm actively pitching. And I've been watching a lot of TV, so I understand and I learn, and I really like that too. So I don't know how I'd answer your question. I think they're both very different, but I like them both.
I guess my follow-up question would be, is it rare to find a writer who can seamlessly flow between the TV and film like that? Or is it more common than we think?
You know, I don't know. I really don't know. I know there's a lot of writers who really, just specialize because it's what they love and they don't want to do the other. There are some TV writers who only want to do TV. They want to be staffed in the rooms. They want to become, executive producers and showrunners. And that's like their whole goal. So I don't know if there's a lot like me that like to write both, but and again, I don't see myself in the room. So I like to create the concept and then, deliver it and maybe, have a producer role, but that's all. So I don't know. It's a good question.
In that Shonda Rhimes masterclass I was telling you guys about, it really, I don't know if any of you have masterclass, but it's very interesting. Some of the people that have on there, some of the people they have on there are really not available in any other space other than masterclass. But she was, and tell me if you agree with this, Anna, she was saying that to write for a feature is to write something and then let it go. It's the vision of the director. And then to write for a series, you are the visionary. It's 2 totally different things. So do you agree with that kind of sort of in your experience anyway?
I can see where she's saying that. Now she holds a lot more of the reins than say someone like me. But yeah, I can see where the writer, the writer has more of the vision and more of that responsibility. A feature is truly, screenwriting is more like creating a blueprint than,
Very good. Yeah.
a novel is like fully fleshing out. In the novel, you're the director, you're the production designer, you're the editor, you're everything. Whereas with scripts, you're not. It's more of a blueprint for those who will come aboard and flesh it out. But yeah, I would say in TV, you have to have a little bit more of the awareness of where that story's going, who's doing what, when, what the seasons are going to look like. Yeah, I think you have more say. The format or the medium that really puts the writer in the driver's seat is theater. That's where the writer is much more respected and has more say and sway, and often becomes a director as well.
Very good questions, everybody. Go ahead, Basil.
Have you been in a situation where you might have gotten multiple offers, and how would you deal with it if you did for the same project?
Right. Well, I haven't been in that situation yet. But I think there's a lot to consider. I mean, the money is one element, but who's getting it, what they're going to do with it, and what they're going to turn it into is another. And how much, if I did want to have a role, say as a producer, would they be open to doing that or not? That would be a factor. So I think there would be a lot to consider that would not only just be the money.
Right, right. And one last question. You mentioned Francis Ford Coppola. I'm a huge fan, of course. What did you do with him? What kind of project was it?
I was the one of the location managers on The Rainmaker. It was the John Grisham book that was an
Yes,
adaptation.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was Matt
Right.
Damon's first really big role.
Yeah,
I
that's
got
a
to
wonderful
see
film. Yeah.
Matt Damon and Matthew McConaughey in their first big breakout
Right.
roles. It was really
Right.
fun.
Good. Thank you.
And Francis was interesting. I mean, I learned a lot working with Francis.
Yeah.
He was because he's he writes his own stuff too, and so he would be changing stuff. We'd be filming, and he would change stuff for tomorrow's shoot, and we'd have to just scramble and make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely interesting filmmaker. I only got the chance to meet his brother many years ago, who was a professor at the time
Mm,
in San Francisco University.
right.
Yeah.
We were in Memphis for the most part with this show.
Mm. Cool.
Yeah.
So Anna, do you have a name for the latest story that you're working, the series? Do you have a name for that so that we can keep an eye out for it when it becomes super famous on Netflix?
You mean the Indigenous
Yes.
story, the TV show?
Yes.
I call it Rebirth.
Okay.
EARTH.
Okay. We will have to keep an eye out for that because it sounds like a really cool story.
Fingers crossed. Thanks.
Oh, fingers crossed. Well, thank you so much. Both conversations I've had with you has been very illuminating. You have a very cool insight into a lot of different things that I don't think everybody thinks about. That's important that they do. So I sincerely appreciate your time tonight. I know I myself have gotten a lot out of it, and everybody else shaking their head seems to as well.